All right, I'm going to show you how to sew a tailored placket. So I've got multiple pieces. So you have this pattern piece available online, as well as this pattern piece available online. There's two different kinds of plackets on this sample, but I'm going to show you them one at a time. So first the tailored placket, which is this piece here and this square here. Notice I have got this shape, and they match up. So I've got my fabric here, and I've only drawn that shape. And this is going to sit right on top of this. Notice this is the wrong side of the fabric. I've drawn this on the wrong side of the fabric. On my pattern piece, I've also drawn this on the wrong side of the fabric. When you are working with your like a pattern from Joann's or something like that, all of these markings will be on the face of the on the face of the pattern, which indicates that you're going to be marking them as though it's on the right side. You make sure that these marks get to the wrong side of the fabric. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to line up these. Now, do I have to completely draw them in like this the way that I did? No, I only did that so that it would show up nicely on the camera. But I'm going to make sure that those perfectly line up at the top and at the bottom. Just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to start sewing at the bottom, and I'm going to sew. I'm not going to sew down this middle line or pay attention to this Y at all. I am just going to start sewing at the bottom, and I'm going to sew up one side, and you got to be precise about this. And about a ½ inch away from the end, I'm going to decrease my stitch length down to like a 1 or a 1.5, probably do 1.5. And that's just to protect this corner, because I'm going to have to slash to it. The last couple stitches I'm actually doing by hand, so that I make sure that I hit that point exactly, and it needs to be exact. There is no sort of like, oh, it's close enough on this. No, this needs to be precise, otherwise it'll look like crap. So you got to be precise on it. Once I have gone around that, so I kept it at a 1.5 from here all the way to here. Once I hit here, I changed it back to a 2.5 stitch length all the way to the end. And now what I'm going to do, while it's still like this, and you could actually do this beforehand, on this placket piece, you can take this little square up here. Sometimes they give it to you in a different shape, and they want you to press it first. I oftentimes don't like having to press that little point, so what I do is I fold this little square right sides together, just here at the top. And I sew at a 1/4 inch this top part, and I'll do it, and then I'll show you what that looks like. But it's not too late to do it, obviously, after you've begun. That was not as precise as I would have liked it to be, so I am going to redo that. All right, let's try that again without the oops. All right. So once I have sewn this right sides together, so here's my wrong side of this. I folded this little top bit right sides together and then just sewed it together at a 1/4 inch. I can take that and fold it right sides out. And I can let it flatten out to create a little point. Just like that. So on this back side, I will see the wrong side together and this finished up here as well. Got a lot of thread. Great. Once you get to this point, like that, we can slash along this line and up into the corners. And it's pretty important that you do right down the middle. And then what you're going to do is you are going to follow those lines of the Y and you're going to cut over to the corners. And I am going all the way to that line of thread. Not through the line of thread, just right to it. And I'm being very courageous about that. But that's the reason why we decreased the stitch length, was so that I could come over all the way and fill those up. Now I'm going to go over and do some pressing on this. All right, now I'm going to press this tailored placket. Ignore all the pins over here, that's for the continuous bound placket. First what I'm going to do, I'm looking at the wrong sides, and I'm going to press all of these sides, the two long sides as well as the short side. And all I'm going to do is just press it in like that. Give it a good blast with steam to make it stay. And also make sure all of these seam allowances might be different on patterns that you use from somebody else. So these are all 1/4 inch seam allowances. You might find them to be 3/8, 1/2 inch. You might just find them all different. So now what I'm going to do, same techniques though. I'm going to take these and I'm just going to shove them inside this hole. So that when they're all the way through, we have the outline of the hole that we sewed. And I can take this and turn it right side up. So now I'm looking at the right side of the fabric. So all of the stuff that was on the wrong side is now on the right side. And I'm going to take this teeny tiny top bit right here, this 1/4 inch seam allowance section up here. I'm going to make sure that I press that to be nice and crisp and square. And that's going to always stay poking straight up. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the short side and press it over. It's already been pressed over once, but now it's just on this other side. And I'm going to fold this section up out of the way so that we're just paying attention to this. And I'm first going to press 1/4 inch along that. So you'll see the 1/4 inch over here that we stitched, and then we'll have 1/4 inch that is facing back. And the distance between this edge here that I'm pressing and this line of stitching should be about 1 inch. Because now once that's pressed, and I can lay everything else down, when I fold it back over, I'm going to fold it over until the fold line that I just pressed hits this stitch line. And that's going to create a 1/2 inch little binding to cover up all of that stitching that we did and all of those seam lines. It's going to enclose all of that. And then I'm going to press it again. Once that is all pressed, I can press this other side. And it's just going to flip down over the top of everything that we just did. And I'm going to press it. So on this side, over here, I'm going to press it 1/4 inch, just like I did on the other side. And then I'm going to fold it back. But this time I'm not folding it back until I hit the stitch line. I'm folding it back until the point is centered. So it's actually going to be hiding this bottom edge a little bit, this stuff that I just pressed. It'll still hide that a little bit, but it's going to stick over the stitch line by about 1/4 of an inch. Actually 1/4 of an inch exactly. And then I'm going to press that down. Just like that. So that I can fold it back and see that. And there's this little house up here on the top. Once that's done, we can go finish sewing it. All right, I'm going to finish the placket now. We've pressed this little house over, but we're going to pull this out of the way so that all we're looking at is that first section that we pressed. And we are going to press, here's the line of stitching. So on the same side as the line of stitching, we are going to press sew at exactly 1/16 of an inch from the base all the way up to the top. Just like that. And it's holding all of this together. On the back of it, if I've lined everything up perfectly, it will also be exactly 1/16 of an inch away from that stitch line there as well, which this is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to stitch this part. I don't need to stitch the fold over here where it opens, but I do need to stitch this other side down because it's closing in all of the construction. The other thing that needs to get caught in this stitch line is a line that comes across like this. And it needs to catch, if I look at the back, it needs to catch this area right here so that that doesn't have a little gap. So I need to figure out where that is. So I'm going to peek underneath here and I can see where that edge is. So I'm going to pin that just so that there's a pin sticking out so I know where I want to come back across. And then I can do a couple other pins. We want to make sure that as we sew this, it's perfectly even all on both sides, so it's exactly the same dimension coming up, and that we have even number of stitches coming up to this side and even number of stitches coming down from the other side of the point. Basically what we want is to make sure that this point is perfectly symmetrical. So when I come to sew this side, I need to make sure I count the stitches here and make sure I count the stitches here and make sure that they're exactly the same. I'll be beginning on this side with this particular placket. I need to begin stitching right here and come over here, come up, 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 down, and then all the way down this other side. If I'm doing, so this would be for the left hand sleeve. If I was doing this for the right, I would actually be sewing this other side and come up to the top and then finish the bottom of the house second. So depending on which sleeve you're sewing, you either sew up here first and then come down, or start at the bottom and then come up. So it depends on which pattern piece you have. You are coming up, you are using a left sleeve pattern piece, so you'll be starting at the top here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it in, and I can see where this pin is poking out right here, and I need to come right here. So I need to come from here over, leave the needle down, pivot, come up to the top, needle down, pivot, come up to the top, needle down, pivot, come down. And we're just going to go in that order. Make sure that your back stitches at this point are very neat and tidy. So maybe only do like 2 back stitches so that they look nice and clean. Get that needle out, pin out of there so we don't accidentally sew it. I'm coming straight across. The minute I hit 1/16 of an inch, I'm going to pivot and come up to the top pivot. I'm going to count my stitches coming up here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which means that I need 7 coming down this other side. 6, 7. Perfect. Needle down, pivot, and now I just can finish by going straight down the side. Depending on your pattern, you might have lined that this fold might have happened in a different place, where it lined up over here might have been in a different place. All of those things will be pattern specific. It's just the technique that you're concerned about with how to put this together. So frequently measurements are different. And from the back, you can also see that I caught that little section that I needed to catch. So that is a tailored placket.